In early spring 1981, Geoservices Canada posted me to St John's, Newfoundland. I was to take a survival at sea training course before joining a drill ship in the Labrador Sea and to work as a mudlogger on a wildcat drilling operation. I love St John's. Oh, for sure, the weather's awful for a good chunk of the year, but the people are wonderful and, most importantly, they seem to enjoy life. There were 8 of us split into pairs on this 3-day course. Day 1, first aid, Day 2, lifeboat training, and Day 3, firefighting. So having joined the course, introductions done, I was teamed up with Wayne. It's interesting how quickly you get to know people when you take a course like this. Buddying up with Wayne was an obvious choice because he and I were both with Geoservices and we'd worked together on a couple of rigs in Alberta. Today, Wayne was particularly animated because he was born and raised in St John's and happy to be in his hometown again. The first module was uneventful. Wayne and I engaged in some friendly competition, each trying to excel the other in the practical exercises. The second day was quite a bit more interesting. The morning was taken up with some excellent instruction on survival suit training, launching lifeboats, how to get into a life raft from the water, etc. In the afternoon, we put all this great learning into practice. The instructor led us outside to a large wave pool. We buddied up and helped each other into our survival suits. It was at this point that Wayne flatly told me that he couldn't swim. I remember reassuring him that firstly the survival suit would ensure that nothing terrible would happen to him, and secondly we'd all have his back, so the 8 of us, now all suited up and feeling like Michelin men, got into a quick huddle and fast-tracked some solutions to Wayne's predicament. "Come on, you guys, in the water," barked the instructor as he turned the wave machine on. You've never seen such a sight. 7 guys in a tight bunch holding Wayne up in rough water. Who knows what the instructor was thinking when he saw Wayne's head, a head and shoulders bobbing way, way above everyone else's. The life raft was dropped into the pool and we started towards it. Our plan was to have one guy get into the raft first to grab Wayne if needed. This was actually a good call. It became obvious that getting into the raft was more difficult than just hauling yourself in. The weight of the suits out of the water made it necessary for most of us to take a good plunge and to use the buoyancy of the suit to give us an upward push. Naturally enough, our Wayne was terrified. Well, we just grabbed a hold of him and lobbed him into the life raft. I say lobbed. Actually, the action was more like that of a champagne cork. We were pretty happy with the end result, but the instructor wasn't. He shouted, "He's got to get in unaided." Oh dear. So Wayne's now back in the water, and we're telling him to grab hold of the side of the raft, hold your nose and push yourself hard down into the water, kick yourself up and grab the side of the raft. We convinced ourselves that the instructor of course couldn't really see what's happening under the water. And so as Wayne ducked down, 6 pairs of feet lifted him up and kicked him into the raft. It worked. The instructor obviously knew what was going on, but chose to let it go. So that was pretty much it for day 2. I'd gotten to know Wayne a little bit by now, but I really got to know him the next day. Day 3, firefighting. Once again, theory in the morning and exercises in the afternoon. We learned all sorts of good stuff, how to deal with any fire with a limitless supply of seawater, how to use a fire extinguisher as a heat shield while using it to kill a moderately sized fire, all sorts of smart things that you really hope that you never have to use. The afternoon started well, using fire extinguishers and learning how high-pressure hoses respond if you let go of them, using a hose either as a water wall or as a water jet. So very briefly, the fire hoses had 2 modes of operation controlled by a lever at the front of the hose. The first position presented the water as a 360-degree fan-shaped spray, a water wall, ideal for cooling things down. The second position created a more direct spray, which does the job of putting a fire out. This difference is quite important, as you'll see in a moment. The instructor led us to a 100-foot-long blackened hulk, which was probably once a section of a cargo ship. I guess it had been modified with additional bulkheads, etc., just to create a bit of a maze and to make the exercises a bit more interesting, a little more testing maybe. We togged up with welly boots, fire suits, breathing gear, the works. and the instructor explained to us that on his command we were to work in pairs, to use a water wall to get close to the fire that he was about to light, and then per the instruction we had received earlier in the day, we were to put the fire out using a hose spray action. So one guy on the water wall and the other on the spray. He went on to say that it was pretty tight in there, cocking us some towards the hulk, so we'd need to work in single file. He'd leave us to figure it out. With that, he strode to the far end of the hulk, lit a torch and tossed it into an open section of the roof. After a few moments, thick black smoke pouring out of the roof told us that we were in business. I turned to Wayne and said, "Look, I'm a lot taller than you. If it's narrow in there, you won't be seeing a whole lot if you're behind me, so you go in first with the spray. I'll cover us both with a water wall." Wayne wasn't going for this at all. "I'm not going in first, Phil, no way." Well, before I could respond to Wayne's refusal, the instructor was bawling and pointing at us. "You two in there now," he shouted. So in I waddled, dragging a hose behind me. The instructor wasn't kidding when he said it was tight. Pitch dark, too. I suddenly had water on the end of the hose, and I was surprised at how much force was needed to keep the thing from whipping out of my hands. The strong smell of diesel and wading through a couple of feet of water didn't help the feeling of claustrophobia. I could hear the roar of the fire at the end of the hulk, which got even louder as I picked my way through the labyrinth of narrow passageways and bulkheads. It became more difficult to drag the hose. God knows where Wayne was. As instructed, I had the hose set to the water wall position, and indeed it kept things pretty cool, which obviously became important as I drew closer to the fire. Dragging the hose through the maze had its challenges, and to my cost I quickly realised I couldn't just let go of it and walk back and free the areas where it had got stuck. Left to its own devices, this thing flailed around like a tormented snake. I couldn't believe it was so dark in there until I turned a corner and I could see a faint glow at the end of the passageway. A couple more turns and bulkheads to climb through, and bingo, there was the fire. But still no Wayne. I stood there blinking at this open barrel of diesel raging furiously in front of me. Okay, I could hear him now, cursing like crazy, sloshing around behind me as he got closer. I called out to him, "Okay, mate, you're on. Put this thing out." There's a lot of puffing and grunting from behind me going on, and I guess that he'd got the water wall up, because I wasn't seeing any evidence of water spray, but water is cascading onto me from the ceiling. I was about to shout out to him to turn the spray on when, to my horror, he jammed the end of his hose into my pocket. I now had ice-cold seawater coursing through my left trouser leg. The force was so great that it knocked me clean off my legs, landing me flat on my back into the water. It was something of a cartoon scene. With Wayne's hose cascading freezing water at 200 gallons per minute over my groin and not daring to let go of my own hose, it was quite the struggle to get up. After what seemed like an age, I was back on my feet. "Come on, Wayne, get her done." I couldn't believe it. I could now feel the force of his hose jabbing into the small of my back. I shouted at him to stop, pushed my hose lever to the spray position, and put the fire out. "Okay, Wayne, we're done. Let's get out of here." I could not believe my ears when he shouted back, "Which way's out?" "Oh, just follow the hose," I yelled. Mercifully, the hoses had now been turned off. I followed him out. Cold and shivering and looking like a keel-hauled rat that had been in a fistfight, I climbed through the final bulkhead into the bright spring afternoon sunshine. Wayne came across to me and clamped his arms around me, and with the demeanour of an excited puppy said, "We done good, Phil." I quietly retorted, "For the love of sweet Jesus, Mary, Joseph and the wee donkey, what in God's name were you playing at?" Actually, I said nothing of the sort. What I actually said was,